Good evening. Welcome to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver. I'm an employment law and business law attorney, and I'm here every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. with different guests, and we talk about issues that affect and impact business owners and entrepreneurs, particularly during COVID-19 and this pandemic. And so tonight, in the spirit of similar guests along those lines, I'd like to welcome a special guest tonight, Polina Bogdanovitch. Polina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. Yeah, for sure. I think I'll just read your introduction, if I may, for our audience can hear more about you and your organization and why you're here tonight. So as I mentioned, Polina is our guest, and she manages member relations for the French American Chamber of Commerce of New York, where she works hand in hand with entrepreneurs, corporate executives, and SMEs and young professionals, forming the dynamic network of 900 French and American professionals, of which I'm a member, and I can say it's a really fantastic organization. So, in the context of her role, Polina serves as a growth partner for French businesses seeking to enter or expand in the US market, and she serves as a resource for US companies looking to grow their European clientele by identifying synergies between members and facilitating networking, introductions, and referrals. Polina is a French national living in the US since 2012, and she has worked in the US, in the UK, France, and Argentina, and speaks English, French, Spanish, and Russian. Polina, again, impressive background, and we're glad to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you very much, Eric.
All right, sure thing. So maybe I'll jump into a description of our topic, and then we can get some questions and have a discussion around that topic. So topic tonight is networking in the time of COVID. And we're really talking about that with the COVID-19 pandemic still present, a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners are struggling with the loss of face time in front of their colleagues, their clients, even their employees and their prospective clients and customers. And so the question becomes, how do you stay connected with your professional network and maintain a remainder of being relevant and top of mind? How do you do so when you can't have face-to-face meetings or host live events in a certain space, a conference room or your office? So it's a question of really how to pivot and what organizations can do to help their members to connect. And so in that spirit, Polina will talk about the French American Chamber of Commerce, the New York branch, and how they've addressed this topic, specifically how her organization has helped its members, which include international businesses and their employees, to stay connected this past year. It should be a valuable show for anyone seeking tips on networking and tips on connecting through social media and other online mediums during these often isolated times. So Polina, I thought I might ask you a starting question, if you can just tell our guests a little bit more about yourself and about the French American Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Eric, for this introduction and again for having me on the show. So as Eric mentioned, I'm Polina Bogdanovitch. I'm the Member Relations Manager at the French American Chamber of Commerce for the New York chapter of the Chamber. So to begin with, the French American Chamber of Commerce, which we also call FACC New York for short, is a 501c6 non-profit organization. And our mission, broadly speaking, is to develop economic and commercial partnerships between France and the United States and their respective business communities. Mm-hmm. We're a very unique organization in the sense that we are truly binational. So as you would know, Eric, as a member, we're not, a community of French expatriates in the US. We truly are here to foster mutually beneficial partnerships between French and American organizations. So about 60% of our members are French nationals in the US, but the remainder, about 30% are American companies, American organizations. And we are very unique also in the sense that we are such a diverse network when it comes to the sectors represented, when it comes to the seniority levels, the size of organizations. We're historically, the Chamber has been around since, I think, 1895 or something like that. It has been a while. Historically, obviously, we've had a very strong presence in sectors like banking and finance, luxury, fashion and beauty, obviously with strong ties to French organizations in those sectors, but at the current stage, we've really diversified and have also very strong foothold in food and beverage, spirits, technology, sustainability, HR. So again, a very large numbers of sectors, and our members really range from large organizations, so large banks, the large French companies that you might think of, to auto entrepreneurs, startups, service providers, many of which have a true, like Eric himself, experience in supporting international organizations that are looking to grow their US activities and to do so with the best approach and minimize their risks. So and we'll get to it, I'm guessing, with your next questions, Eric, but the challenge for us during these pandemic times has really been to engage all those different buckets within our membership, whether they be, young professionals, large corporates, startup founders, and across all sectors, and ensure we were aware of their objectives and ensure we were, those organizations were best equipped to, again, facilitate their growth. So that's for the Chamber. In terms of my role as the member relations manager, I wear many hats, but primarily I'm responsible for being the main point of contact of our network. So whether it be, again, new companies that just entered the US or just became aware of the organization, or with some of our members that have been part of the Chamber for 30, 40, 50 plus years. So my role is to be in, nearly constant communication with them and be aware, again, of their goals, of their challenges, of their unique areas of expertise, to, again, for myself and the team to be able to facilitate, to identify and facilitate synergies within the community via introductions, via networking events, by allowing them to share their expertise throughout the network with different, again, thought leadership events and articles that we publish on their behalf. So that's for my role here at the FACC.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really in depth there, what you said. I hear a lot of things in your description, which sounds accurate to me in terms of my experience as a member over the last couple of years, or maybe a year, and I think it's actually only been about a year and a half or less. But what I hear is certainly a very big boat, right? It's big enough for a lot of people to be members. And as you said, not just French companies or French nationals or French owners, but rather people of all different backgrounds and different national origins, and people from different countries, and also people right here in the US. You mentioned a wide array of people in terms of members who have large companies and small business. And then I have noticed as well that industry-wide is pretty broad. You've got your entrepreneurs, you've got the food and beverage component that you mentioned. So for those listening tonight that might be interested in having a possible another networking group to join, it's a good organization. It's kind of funny. When I joined the organization, I had a few colleagues who were French or French American business owners, and they'd invited me to a couple of events. And I found that it was very welcoming and very certainly lively and very organized. And I also found that in my introductions a couple of times, people who met me, my last name is Sarver, but sometimes it gets misspelled as Sarvar, Savar, which could be a French name. So I think people thought I was French coming into it, but it's easily an organization that really is very welcoming. And your role, of course, is very instrumental. I know that in my time as a member. We've interacted. You've reached out to make introductions. So good to hear all that background. I think that's important. I think for our listeners, and I think it definitely feeds into the rest of our questions and our discussion this evening, and mainly about the challenges that the FACCNY has faced with the pandemic. So I wanted to ask you, what were some of the biggest challenges that you face as an organization, and even you as the member relations manager in the spring of 2020?
Well, thank you. That's a really good question, and I think my answer won't be very surprising. And as you might expect, the shift to virtual when we used to be such a face-to-face, an events-based community has been a huge challenge, because we want to continue to serve our network, and we want to continue ensuring our members still benefit from introductions, still can still leverage the network to fulfill those goals, but how to do that without being able to meet with and to connect with their peers and with potential prospects and shake hands and talk business over a cocktail. Like, it's obviously a lot more difficult to do via an email conversation. So that's definitely been a very strong challenge for us, especially as we had become so active with face-to-face events. You would probably know, Eric, as you were involved in them over the past few years. But in 2019, I believe we had about 50 face-to-face events, so almost one per week. Again, different events serving different purposes. Not all were relevant for everyone, but, we were extremely active. So it's definitely been, a big task for us. And I actually joined the chamber in May, so right in the midst of the lockdown and this transition. It's been a really important challenge for us to be able to continue engaging that community. So we always had a very much hands-on approach, and my predecessors were always very engaged directly with our members and reaching out constantly. And there was still a lot of phone calls going on and a lot of email conversations, but we weren't as needed previously to be facilitators of networking or to be connectors. We would put together those great events, and our events team has always done a wonderful job, but we would be mainly responsible for coming up with a topic that would bring a right audience together, and with choosing venues that would again lead to facilitated networking. But it wasn't so much for us to go up to people at face-to-face events and ask them, who are you here to meet? Let me introduce you to someone. Those things would happen naturally. Now, that this hasn't been possible for over a year now. It's really, a key priority for us to proactively reach out to all of our members. And as you mentioned earlier, we had nearly 900, again, from a lot of different backgrounds, different industries, different, seniority levels, and truly ensure we have those conversations. We're well aware of their challenges, their priorities, what they're looking to get out of this network, to then see what would be the best way for them to achieve it. Because for some, it would be a direct email introduction. For some, it would be, simply them sharing their expertise via, a webinar or an article. So that's really been a key challenge, doing that outreach, doing it, appropriately, and getting the right information from our member organizations or member individuals to ensure, we can identify and facilitate those synergies.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot there, right? I think there are the challenges of having in-person events that are no longer happening, and trying to get members to connect. I mean, I think, as you mentioned, it sounds like there's more of an active role required from you, because in the past, you can get the venue, you can get the music set and have the food and the cocktails or whatever the case may be, and people can sort of create the energy on their own. And now, with everyone being isolated, you have to kind of create that energy for them, or sort of not so much create it for them, but really facilitate it more. And I'd like to really address that topic with you, Polina. We do have to take our first commercial break, but we'll be back and we'll address it. So for those joining us late tonight, or those just tuning in, I'm Eric Sauver. I'm an employment law, business law attorney, and the host of this show, Employment Law Today. I'm here with my guest tonight, Polina and Bogdanovitch from the French American Chamber of Commerce. So stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you interested in having a better relationship with yourself, others, and God? Greetings. I'm your host, Dr. George Andow, for the show, A Journey Through into Awareness. On my show, we journey into the awareness that the mind of God is the true seat of our personal consciousness. We join together each Monday at 7 p.m., so tune in on Talk Radio NYC.
Did you know that nearly 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. battles mental illness? Hi, my name is Albert Daba. I'm the host of the show Extra Innings. Extra Innings, I discuss the topics of wellness, mental health, and the experience of surviving multiple suicides within my family. Listen live every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern to Extra Innings for discussions with sports figures, artists, mental health professionals, many others. That's Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Graham Dobbin. Join me every Thursday evening for the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. We speak to people from business, sport, military, and politics, all around what makes a great leader. The personal experiences of what's worked and, maybe more importantly, what hasn't worked. So that's 7 o'clock every Thursday evening, the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. Listen to real stories of real leaders.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver. I'm here tonight with my special guest, Ms. Polina Bogdanovitch from the French American Chamber of Commerce, the New York chapter, of which, as I mentioned, full disclosure, I'm a member, so I'm biased in favor of them. I speak highly of them. I think they're really a great organization. Polina, I was thinking on the break about how some of the challenges that you described for the FACC, pivoting to virtual events, fostering that environment of inclusiveness, I think can really be something that a lot of business owners out there can relate to in terms of their own connections they want to make with their colleagues or their clientele. So it's really good. I'd love to explore more of that with you. I was wondering about, you mentioned pivoting or transitioning to a virtual networking events, and wondered if you can walk us through, like, say, the first few months, the process of making that pivot, what it was like for you as an agency or organization.
Well, it was a lot of trial and error, Eric, let me tell you that.
Sure.
I think, in March when COVID hit and we started working remotely, and obviously face-to-face events weren't a possibility anymore, we did what everyone else, started doing, and we started hosting webinars, and we had many, as you know, yourself, Eric, we have amazing sets of expertise within the network, whether it be, law or CPAs or, sustainable organizations, diversity and inclusion topics. So there were many members that, volunteered to host those events, host those webinars that volunteered topics. So that was amazing content to provide for our members. However, as I'm sure we've everyone listening to this show probably experienced, there's the Zoom fatigue really started settling in, and it became more and more difficult for us to be able to ensure strong returns for the member organizations speaking and sharing their expertise, for us as well, in terms of, we're a nonprofit, we're a team of 8. So all resources are also, limited when it comes to planning. So we do need to make sure we are putting, our efforts in sort of the right, in the right direction. So that's how it started. And we've started noticing, unfortunately, a drop. Every week we had, less and less engagement with our webinars, which, isn't common for our members, because they are very engaged individuals and very proactive, and they are here to network. So, that's when we started thinking, okay, this clearly COVID is here to stay, because I think we were all pretty optimistic at first, comes the summer, we'll start having events again.
Right.
We had to pause, towards, late last spring, and really think of what we were trying to achieve, what our members wanted, and how to, direct our efforts, accordingly.
It's a good point you make, Polina, about the Zoom fatigue setting in. And I think that's something that I think a lot of members here can relate to, or people listening, members of the FACC, but also our audience tonight listening to us speak. Certainly, and you're right, I think as it started out, I think the challenge of thinking this might be just a couple months, right? Maybe 3 months, and then realizing, as I hear you say, that it was a long-term situation, as we're still evidenced by the fact that we're still in it right now. We're still having this conversation. You and I now are speaking on Zoom and not in person in the studio. So, good to hear that. I mean, I must say, I was impressed as a member when in May, I think it was late May of 2020, so 11 months ago, but feels like 11 years ago or yesterday, hard to tell, right, with COVID, that you had the Ripple event sort of coordinated with other organizations. And what struck me about it was that there was a very much like a process involved. It wasn't just throwing everyone together with a Zoom password and everyone talks. There was a whole setting up of profiles and sort of a whom do you want to meet and what do you offer? And so people would connect before the event and then on the event and then afterwards. So, I think that was a good example of how you guys were able to pivot and also keep members engaged instead of just having like an event like, okay, we're going virtual without, so you had this whole prelude leading up to it. Were you there for the Ripple event? And if you were, can you tell us a little bit about, what were some of the success measures of it? What were your thoughts about it when it was over?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to hear that positive feedback on that event. It's been like you said, very well received and very appreciated by our members. And we've had 4 editions since May 2020. So I think that testifies to the success of that initiative. So I think that happened around the time when we started, rethinking or approach to content and events, for sure. Yeah. And one lesson we really learned, as mentioned earlier, we are pretty small organizations. Chambers of commerce are typically nonprofits, and I think we have a staff of 8 at the moment, and that is big for a chamber. Often it's just 1 or 2 individuals, sometimes part-time, managing those activities. So the Ripple is a wonderful example of all us pulling resources together with some of our partner organizations to, again, for the benefits of all of our communities and of all of our members. So the Ripple networking event was organized in partnership with about 15 to 20, depending on, I think the first one, there might have been 10 to 15 partners, but now a few more have gotten on board. And those partners were other European American chambers in the US. Actually, I cannot take the credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was an idea of the Belgian Chamber, if I'm not mistaken, Belchamp, who are also a wonderful organization initially, and they reached out to a number of partners. We work quite closely with those organizations, and we're all facing the same challenge. You know, how do we engage our community? And again, you know, we are truly a binational network, but our members are not limited. You know, a French company that comes here, they're not only here to do business with other French organizations, you know, they can have potential clients that are other European multinationals, again, other American organizations that are not necessarily directly affiliated with us. So this networking event was a wonderful platform for our members to, again, broaden their reach and not be limited to, you know, our network. And it provided something that actually we didn't have at a past, you know, face-to-face events where you can't bring, there's only so many people you can bring in together. So to answer your question in terms of the process, we were, you know, very blessed, I guess, with a great technology platform called Conversation Starter, which really facilitated and automated a lot of things for us, because that really has been key for us, you know, automating as much as possible, bearing in mind, of course, you know, our resources as well. And again, working together with other organizations to help us with the promotion, with the implementation of the platform, and so forth. So it was, you know, as straightforward as possible for our members, completing their profile. As you might remember from the event, the Conversation Starter platform is quite interesting because members could not only include, you know, their basic description, but it really was around what they're here to offer and what they're here to ask for or to get, and that was quite an interesting way, we all thought, for you know, people to identify each other, identify potential contacts, and it really was in a almost speed networking formats with 12-minute slots for members to connect to one another, again giving them the opportunity to, you know, truly start conversations with the right people, but at the same time to also, you know, be able to jump from, you know, different conversations and interact with a variety of individuals. So again, very successful initiative. And because I mentioned earlier, you know, a lot of trial and error and a lot of adaptation, the event in May was such a success. We weren't sure, you know, that we were going to continue doing that, but it was a wonderful success. We collected members' feedback afterwards. We made some improvements for, you know, future initiatives, but overall we've continued having such initiatives with the other chambers, with the Ripple. But and I can get to that in a minute, but we've also done since our own virtual initiatives, just, you know, for the FACC network, for specific sectors, for new members, and we've learned from that a great deal for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to, if I may, go back something you said very interesting, Polina. I didn't want our audience to miss it, but well, thank you, by the way, for that, you know, really in-depth description of the event and also the challenges you faced and the way you met them. You know, I heard a couple of times you talked about the need, you pulled together resources and there were other partners involved, and you know, I think that's a theme that a lot of companies can relate to in terms of, you know, it takes more resources to make different events, to make workshops, to make networking happen. And it also seems to be that, you know, one thing I observed, well, from what you said, and also from what I observed as a participant in that actual event, was that with the virtual aspect of things with this pandemic, you can actually sort of engineer connections in ways that you don't always do when you have a live event. Like, for example, you mentioned the software, the program, the introduction starter, where people could put down what they want and what they need and whom they're looking for. So I think it's important, you know, because I think one of the reasons I thought this would be a great show is not just in terms of our audience of business owners can hear that there's a good networking / organization to attend, but also they can learn lessons. Like if they're having, say, trouble connecting with their clients or their prospects or their employees, you know, what lessons can they learn from another entity like yours that did it successfully? So just some thoughts there. And I know we have, I definitely want to ask you some more questions about this topic. We do have to take our second commercial break. So I'll just note again, you're listening to Talk Radio NYC. to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver, employment law, business law attorney representing employers and management. And I'm here with my guest tonight. Happy to have Polina Bogdanovitch from the French American Chamber of Commerce in New York. So stick around and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Do you run or are ready to open your own business? Hi, I'm Jeremiah Fox. I've been operating and opening small business for the last 25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Wise Content Creates Wealth. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Friday afternoon from 1 p.m. to 2. They say content is king. Well, wise content rules the world. Every episode features tools and tips for content marketing and business people telling the wise content stories of that success. Tune in every Friday from 1 p.m. to 2 on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver, here, as I mentioned, with Polina Bogdanovitch from the French American Chamber of Commerce. Polina, welcome back. Good to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, we're talking about, right, the ways in which your organization changed and pivoted. That's what I'm hearing from you, what we're talking about tonight. During COVID, you had all these members and a lot of live events. That was a big, staple of your organization. Live networking, live workshops, live member presentations and breakfasts and lunches. And I remember my first breakfast when I was reminded that in French culture, breakfast is often a small meal, not a big hearty meal. So I came super hungry to this breakfast event. And, but, I left very satisfied. I mean, both like satiated from the food they had and, but also just, with the connections. And I remember a sense of, there was an organization about the event, and there was clearly a very welcoming component, from the FACC's staff and personnel. And so I guess one thing I wonder is, can you, if for our audience listening tonight, how would you describe like ways that they can make their virtual events more welcoming? How could they make it more of a sort of add a personal touch?
Absolutely. Well, I would recommend just, of course, it sounds like a no-brainer, but knowing your audience. So knowing, that's particularly important for us at the Chamber, because as mentioned when we started this episode of the podcast, We are a very, very diverse community of, again, 900 members, various sectors represented, whether various, levels of seniority. So an event that will, be engaging and be a positive experience for, the CEO of a Fortune 500, financial organization won't necessarily be something that will interest a young professional with 5 years of experience in the food and beverage industry looking for a new opportunity. So that's been really, really key for myself and the team. I work really closely with our communications and events department, of course, and putting together initiatives. And that's really what has been, the bulk of our work in this transition to virtual, listening to what the network wants and creating initiatives to ensure the different areas of interests are, represented. And again, that can be in terms of content, that can be in terms of formats. Senior level executives, for example, would be more comfortable in, invitation only, smaller sort of virtual roundtable type of events, which we've started, which we've launched actually in January this year and have been really successful, where it'd be, a smaller group presentation, only with executive leaders. It can be in a specific industry. The most recent one that we had was more general, but again, for CEO, CFO, C-level executives. And, it was simply a more, comfortable way for those individuals to truly interact, to share their challenges, to directly ask questions to the member that was presenting. So that's something that has been very successful. And those individuals wouldn't necessarily be the ones, for example, there can be exceptions, but as you may have noticed at a pure networking events open to all, like the Ripple, it's not typically those sort of profiles that would necessarily attend. So in our outreach, when it comes to specific events, we do work on a lot of a targeted basis to ensure members know why they're being invited, because it is particularly relevant to the challenges they're facing, to their industry, to their job functions. If we're having an event, for example, for HR professionals, so it really is in the approach. We thought of you. We thought of what's key in your industry, what's a key challenge, and here is an opportunity to discuss with your peers or to hear from your peers, depending on whether it is a content or more of a networking initiative.
That's, I think, like kind of hits the nail on the head for me in terms of what you're saying there about tailoring your invitations, tailoring your events to the people whom might be most responsive. The examples you gave about to the CEOs, like what are their needs, what are their wants, and how could you have an event that's more small, invite only, sort of upscale, and then maybe you have a certain lively or fun event for the younger or newer members to be a part of. It really, to me, I think, Polina speaks about something that I think our audience can take a lesson from in terms of when you have a Zoom event or an online event as opposed to in person. When you're in person, people can often sort of seek out, right, their own, they kind of walk around and they see like with whom they most jive, and they kind of get together, and you see people in different clusters. And if online during the pandemic, when we're all virtual, often events could kind of just be like various little boxes, right? Like right now there are boxes on the screen here, but you can have 20 different boxes, and you can't really change your box. You can't move your box on Zoom over to somebody else's. So I think to me it's an important lesson. I feel like in this pandemic, we're seeing more and more webinars and information given to us. We're seeing chances to connect. And so it's like we're losing face-to-face and certain intimacy there. But, we are gaining in terms of like the ways that we can sort of engineer or design different gatherings so we can really connect and kind of get some of that personal touch back, so that's kind of what I take from. I don't know if that's something that you've noticed also in terms of how your members respond to your events. They tell you that's a personal touch they feel from the extra.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. That's that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to create, because like you said yourself, there are so many resources available, so many podcasts, so many webinars, so much content, still quite a few networking opportunities and so forth. You really have to, grab the attention of your audience right away. This is, what we're doing, and this is why this is relevant to you. And that's what, I would again recommend. It takes a little bit of extra work, and again, knowing your audience. That's why the FACC will work so closely with our members, having regular calls with them, having a lot of those face-to-face interactions to truly get a feel from what they need. Because what I always say to our members is that we're not industry experts. We are experts in the knowledge and understanding of our network, but our members are the experts in their industries, and they themselves know best what are key topics to address, and what's a certain at a certain seniority level they may be interested in meeting and so forth. So again, listening to that feedback and making sure they're aware it's being taken into account, and creating opportunities accordingly. But like you said, also it's I think we're all craving some face-to-face interactions, but virtual has definitely allowed to open quite a few doors for us in engaging members that are not like previously. French organizations would only join our network once they were already in the US.
Right.
Have more and more, members and speakers at our events, and, partners and participants of our kinds that are still overseas, for example, but are joining the network a little bit ahead of their future development projects. And those wouldn't have been obviously, individuals and companies you would have met at face-to-face events before. Very few would have, taken the trip for that reason. And the same thing for speakers or for event partners as well. We're able to engage, amazing executives that are based, in like different parts of the US or different countries. We have an event coming up next month on May 6th on a sustainability topic. And the speakers, I think there's one based in Israel, and one based in France, and several based in different parts of the US. So it's it definitely has its great perks. And the question is, how will it work after COVID? I don't know, but there is a lot to be gained from virtual networking for sure.
Yeah, I think you make a point there about a lot to be gained from virtual networking if done correctly, if well planned, and you mentioned if done with people's interests in mind. So I hear you talking also, Polina, about the way you can have people come from far away and do things that they couldn't do in person. I think it's an important point. I would say that in having you on the show and your organization as well, the French American Chamber of Commerce, I hope that our listeners in the audience tonight, whether they're watching on Facebook or listening on the radio, could take away two takeaways. I hope one, they know there's a resource out there if they need to join a network and they want to learn more about how can this network help me meet other professionals? How can it spotlight my services, right? Because you talked about people in different industries coming together, and you're sort of like the conduit or the facilitator to get them. And that's one takeaway. But the other takeaway, I think, is that there are people out there who might run a networking group. There are people who might have, let's say, events for their clients, and maybe they're running into this wall of people being sort of, you mentioned like earlier tonight, Zoom fatigue. So they might be hopefully taking away pointers from our conversation. Oh, we can actually tailor certain events on Zoom the way we would in person, right? We can have invites based on people's needs. And then I think something you said, which I don't want to hold until after our commercial break, but the question about moving forward. And I think when we come back, that would be a great topic to address. So folks, I'm Eric Sauver, and host of the show Employment Law Today. Every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Talk Radio NYC. Very happy to have my guest tonight, Ms. Polina Bogdanovitch from the French American Chamber of Commerce. We're really talking about more than just networking. We're talking about tailoring communication and connection in the time of COVID. So stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law, business law attorney, and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Howdy, I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, host of the new podcast, Gateway to the Smokies. It airs on talkradio.nyc every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 7. Every episode is dedicated to memorable experiences in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and surrounding areas. This show features experts and locals who expound upon the richness of culture, history, and adventure that awaits you in the Smokies. Tune in every Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 on talkradio.nyc.
Do you love or are you intrigued about New York City and its neighborhoods? I'm Jeff Goodman, host of Rediscovering New York, a weekly show that showcases New York's history and its extraordinary neighborhoods. Every Tuesday live at 7 p.m., we focus on a particular neighborhood and explore its history, its vibe, its feel, and its energy. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver. I'm joined tonight by my guest, Polina Bogdanovitch. Ms. Bogdanovitch is with the French American Chamber of Commerce, the New York branch. And we're talking about, in a sense, more than just networking in time of COVID. You know, when I think about it in topic, we're talking also about ways to reach out to your target audience, whether they be your employees, whether they be your members of a group, whether they be your colleagues, and really how to connect and how to stay connected and how to keep those methods of connection really fresh in a time when we're all kind of limited in some ways, right? In terms of we're not having in-person events and in-person meetings. So I think it's about connectivity, which I think is really the overarching theme that I see in almost every aspect of how we're coping with, this pandemic. So along those lines, Polina, I wanted to ask you about one of my favorite topics, which is looking ahead, looking at the light at the end of the tunnel. So we were talking a little bit about, ways that the FACC of New York has pivoted during COVID. They went from live events to virtual, to Zoom, from in-person conferences to webinars. I guess my question is, as more people get vaccinated and as we look towards the future reopening, I wonder what COVID-based changes and services do you think the FACC New York will likely keep when we get back to normal? And which ones do you think you might shed to the wayside in the future?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you so much, Eric.
Sure.
We're a few months ago, again, as mentioned earlier, we're very optimistic about COVID, just being a very temporary situation, and
yep.
Face-to-face events were going to resume, by the summer of 2020, which we all know didn't happen. That we were making those plans halfway for, reopening, and it wasn't the best use of our resource. So we eventually made the decision to really, fully focus on what we can control. And that's what I always tell members when they're asking us on, when we do plan on starting face-to-face events again. I mean, now we do have, vaccines underway, and we are starting to see, like you mentioned, some light at the end of the tunnel, but it is still really tricky to truly, say what, a successful, safe, engaging event will look like, and to plan for it. So at the moment, we are planning on having our strategy very much focused around virtual opportunities for the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. As mentioned earlier, also there's been a big demographic change within the network, with some of our members that were based in New York, having moved to Florida or, different parts of the country and still being engaged with us. And we've gained also a lot of members and connections that are, not necessarily based in the tri-state area. So we will need to continue engaging them with virtual content for sure. But, it's also juggling the fact that a lot of our members that are based in New York are craving, those face-to-face interactions and opportunities to directly connect with the network. So, we are discussing, what the future might look like at the moment. Again, I would say, and that can change very quickly, that there will still be a very strong focus on virtual for the rest of the year, with the possibility, when it becomes safe to do so, to little by little, starts to resume those very small group. It will likely be very small in the beginning, at face-to-face events, based again on, because we are limited to smaller groups. It would be also a lot of work for us to, making sure the right people's, the right people are, brought together for specific events, and for us to make sure, the topics are selected really carefully, because again, it will be pretty niche for sure at first when we do reopen. But, other lessons that we've learned, that something we did before, COVID, but we have been, more and more active with, were, email and online introductions between members. And that is something that has been particularly well received within the community during COVID.
Yes.
And that's something, we plan on continuing, and hopefully, we'll have more resource to do so in the coming months and in the near future. But that's a great way, as you mentioned earlier, to engineer those connections, even if those people will in the future have the opportunity to meet face to face. We at the FACC are very well aware of each members' specific areas of expertise, specific challenges. So we will continue to definitely have a lot of those face-to-face calls, those interactions, to really be aware of what the different needs and challenges are, and continue facilitating those one-on-one connections. Something we've really grown as well. And again, I can't take much credit for it. It's mainly our communications team and my colleague Kelsey, but really is the sharing of content and sharing of articles, of videos, and so forth, of our members' different sets of expertise. And that is something we weren't doing as much pre-COVID, and that's also because Kelsey joined the team a little bit before the pandemic started. But that has been a fantastic resource for the community, and something we'll for sure continue. So to answer your question, I don't think there's anything we'll fully discontinue. I mean, hopefully it'll be more face-to-face and less virtual in the future as things reopen. But, there's more things that we didn't consider before that we are looking to keep and continue, to add to our services.
And that's, I think, like right there, Polina, an interesting point about, I think for so long, a lot of organizations and employers and companies, the thought was that when we go back to normal, we're going to sort of scrap all of the stuff we've done during COVID. I know at least a lot of people I know have sort of expressed that sentiment. But when you look into how things work, I think there are a lot of sort of vestiges that we can keep going forward. Like the example you gave about, online outreach, emails to members, introductions. I know I've always appreciated that. To me, it shows that the organization looks out for its members, is thinking about us or me in this situation. When I get an email from you and let's say Matthew Amelon, who's a CPA, we connected and had a good one-on-one. So, I think it's really, that's an important takeaway. And I think I appreciate your reminding people of that if you've got a company and maybe you set up like more of an online service or a portal for your employees, let's say, and they come back, you can keep these things. You don't have to sort of throw them out or scrap them just because the pandemic's over. I mean, some of us, I think, want to maybe like scrap one day. I'm saying when it's safe to do so, our masks and burn them, but there are other things we might want to keep, So I really think it's a good point. And then I think another point you made, and I think this is a key point for anyone who is looking to reopen, whether you're reopening an office for your workers or a networking group you run or whatever the case may be, is that it's going to take some planning and time. Like you mentioned, safety being the first priority and starting with small events and everything. So I think that's really important to convey. And I appreciate your sharing all this with us tonight. We've got about 3 minutes left. The time flies every week, 3 minutes exactly. So what I'll do is I want to give you like 2 minutes uninterrupted just to share any upcoming events you have you want to share or how people can reach you. And I'll take the last minute when I have a 1 minute note here to sort of end the show. So can you tell us, the floor is yours, anything you want to share?
Absolutely. Well, once again, Eric, thank you so much for having me on the show. Anyone who'd be interested in a follow-up conversation, you have my name here on the screen. So please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. That's what we use a lot, to connect with the community, and we can schedule some time to speak. You can also visit our website, faccnyc.org, and then sign up to the newsletter, view any upcoming events. We have a few coming up next week on tech and startup and entrepreneurship topics. We have a Meet the Founders series, for example, starting, and then the sustainability event in partnership with other European American chambers called Rebuild Better, which is coming up on May 6th. So again, all of that will be on our website. Follow us, on LinkedIn or any social media, but we're particularly active on LinkedIn. Again, you don't have to be French. You don't have to have direct ties to France. Chances are, if you are, a business owner in the US, you might, be interested in growing your international clientele. And, whether or not you plan on officially joining the network right away, myself and the team would be very happy to chat and see, again, where there may be synergies within the community. Thank you so much, Eric, for, again, the time and the platform.
My pleasure. That sounds great. All the things you mentioned there. And the website, did you give the website address? Did I miss that? Or it's
www.faccnyc.org.
F as in Frank, A, C as in cat, C as in cat, NY.org.
FACC NYC. So FACC.
Oh, I'm sorry, NYC.
American Chamber of Commerce, NYC.org.
Okay. Polina, thank you so much for being here tonight. Folks, thank you all for tuning in to our show where we had a great guest tonight talking about the French American Chamber of Commerce, a great resource and a great model to look at when you are transitioning back to reopening or in terms of how to best navigate this pandemic that we're still in. I'm Eric Sauver. I'm on this station, Talk Radio NYC, every Tuesday night, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you like what you've heard tonight, for interesting conversations, you can tune in to our Facebook page for a live video, or you can listen on the site itself. So thank you all. Polina, thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Eric. Bye.
Tune in next week.